Hey guys, this is Joe D with the Roundhouse Report. I'm going to talk about Ukraine today. Things can happen overnight, so I always have to date it. It's Saturday, May 4th at 3:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I had a request from a fan, and he wanted to know what's going on here. The entire media is focused on the Israeli campaign in Gaza, and it's shifted the world's attention away from Ukraine. It has a great deal. The thing is, Ukraine just is and I hope they put it in one lump thing instead of dribbling and drabbing, but they have 65 billion, which is almost 1/8 of the United States defense budget. They have 65 billion that are rolling in their way. That's going to include HIMARS. That's going to include an attack on long-range precision missiles. It's going to contain, obviously, millions of rounds of ammunition for small arms. And there's a lot of stuff that they're providing. They're not going to tell you exactly. There's just like 65 billion going over there. All right. Well, if it gets there in one clump, instead of like, here's 10 shells, because they go about 10,000 shells every half a day. So 20,000 shells a day minimum. So it's like, are they going to do what they have been doing since this war started, where it's like, here's 30 shells? It's like, dude, that'll last 10 minutes. So I hope this budget gets there in one package. And what's going on in Ukraine right now is basically the Russians. I don't know exactly what their key objectives were. I remember in 2014 when they took Crimea, the little green men with no Russian insignia. When they took Crimea in 2014, which I don't blame them for doing that, that was a major port for them. Kiev had just elected in a pro-West, pro-European Union, pro-NATO dude into Ukraine. And Russia was like, nope, this violates our strategic interest. And you can understand that. In the United States, I mean, I don't know a comparison, but the Crimean Peninsula is the backbone of the Russian Navy, and the backbone of trade. So they have systematically been trying to build them up. But right now, since they don't have the $65 billion package, and most of the news, based on my sources, a lot of it is just simply covering the anti-Israeli protests across the United States and Europe, which is abhorrent. These dudes, they actually made a Star of David, and they put a swastika in the middle of it, and they drove that van around. I mean, it's really getting out of control. People are being attacked. I've seen some videos. It's awful. They're getting grounded and pounded. Anyhow, Ukraine right now is not doing well, and they have not been doing well for at least 6 months. The ratio of artillery to artillery, the Russians fire 10 artillery shells. The Ukrainians can only respond with 1. So if they have an area saturated by 10, 20 Russian shells from their artillery to bombard an area, the Ukrainians can send back 2. They just don't have it. They just don't have it. And they haven't had it for a long time. And that's a big reason why the Russians, and again, this is the best source that I have for Ukraine. Combat Veteran Reacts. His name's Paul. He's a former platoon commander in Afghanistan. He's a combat vet, and he really digs into this stuff. So if you really want to know about Ukraine, because I'm just giving a gloss over, Combat Vet Reacts. You just type it in, combat space V, and then it'll pop up. Combat Vet Reacts. I highly recommend you watching him. He knows a whole lot more than me. So right now, the Russians have been punching holes like all across the front line. See, that's the thing, is you watch one source and they're like, yeah, the Russians aren't doing too good in this area. But it's like the southeastern or the southwestern part of the country. That's not where the offensives are taking. The offensives are taking place in the southeast and in the east. And Russia has actually punched a huge salient going northwest. I don't know. Going northwest, they've punched a huge salient. And they have another army group coming around. And it looks like they're going to pinch her. They're going to meet up. The Ukrainians are running out of manpower. It's not just a matter of ammunition. They have a lot of people. Ukraine does not. It's a pretty small country when compared to Russia. There have been hundreds of thousands of casualties on both sides, but the Russians can absorb it better. The Ukrainians, at this point, people who were formerly ineligible to be drafted and trained and sent to the front, they passed a new law. Now they are. So they are training conscripts, and again, it's the pace of the Russian offensives, plural. And if you watch Paul, you'll see what I mean, because he brings up the deep state map and he shows you where everything's going on, and he uses great sources like the Institute for the Study of War, and watch him. But there have been a number of major breakthroughs that the Russians have done over the last 6 months. Just, this is the front, just poke a hole, poke a hole, poke a hole. They round up here. This guy push over. I mean, they're all over the place. Now, when you say they're all over the place, and you actually look it up, it's a small country. So you have Ukraine, and then you have here's Russia, and what they want. I mean, ultimately, when I first started saying this, when that Kiev government was voted in, which was pro-West, the Russians saw that as a major threat. And I would too. You would be disturbed if Mexico suddenly voted in a government that was a dictatorship. It would be disturbing. So they voted that in, those people, they were voted in. Ukraine is just like Russia. They're notoriously corrupt. So I don't know if it was a real vote or not, or just a bunch of oligarchs throwing die, trying to figure out who's going to be next. But they're running out of the manpower. And so what that means, they don't have bodies to go fight. They train these kids. I forget the law that was lifted that kept this certain segment of the population exempt from the conscription in Ukraine. Now they're training these guys 3 weeks, 4 weeks. They don't have enough men. They have to do it quickly. They have to turn them out. Now you're getting conscripts that have had 3 weeks of basic training and they're sent to the front line and are killed. Again, most of the Ukrainian professional army, prior to Russia invading in force Ukraine, I forgot what I was going to say. Let me think a second. Let me figure out what's going on. Hang on a second. So it seems like the main goal of the Russian operation was to topple the newly elected Kiev government in 2014 and replace them with a Russian supportive government, someone who's going to look to Russia, not the West, not to Europe, not to the EU, not to the UN, not to nothing. So initially, because you remember, they had like hundreds of thousands of troops on the border, and a 40-mile convoy of tanks was heading toward Kiev. This is at the beginning of the war. They were stopped and fought back. But so the main objective at the beginning, I think, was to put a puppet state in. Don't annex it. Just knock out the government in Kiev and put in your people, kind of like Belarus. So they invaded with a massive military force, and it's been, 2 years now? 2.5 years? And all they've managed to get, if this is Ukraine, and this is Russia, and this is Poland, they've grabbed this. And this is Crimea. My thumb is the Crimean Peninsula. The Russians have grabbed the southeast and south. The southeast and south and east. They've captured a pretty large area. And as you know, you train is small, but they captured enough. And again, this is the Donbass region. This is Zaporizhia. They've in the east, in the southeast, and in the south. The Russians are dug in so well that all they have to do is sit on their hands. You sit on your hands, keep the military pressure up. They've gone times 10 on their artillery shell production. They're going nuts. All they have to do is sit on their hands. They have 1/5 of the territory of Ukraine. That 1/5 of territory is a very strategic piece of territory because it's on the southern coast. So they have 1/5, and all that Russia has to do is keep the pressure on. Honestly, they don't really, unless they want to, they don't have to do more offensives unless you just want to grab as much territory as possible. But the bottom line is, when it comes to peace talks, which I'm sure are coming not soon, but relatively soon, Russia is sitting on all that land. 1/5 of the Ukrainian territory, east, southeast mainly, and then the south, and including Crimea, but that was taken in 2014. So all they have to do is wait. They have at least what they wanted. These are regions, provinces that in 2014 they stirred up an insurrection in, the Donbass, etc. And now they have enough territory where they have their strategic objectives. There might be a pro-West, Zelensky in Kiev, but all Russia has to do is wait. It's all they have to do. And when it comes time to it, they're going to be like, all right, we have 1/5. I just showed you. I was on my hands, so it was shitty. Sorry. It was not the best visuals on my hand. But they have 1/5 of Ukrainian territory. And if you look at the deep state map, go to Google, type in deep state Ukraine map. It'll show you exactly what's going on. It's a great resource. And so bottom line is, the Russians just have to wait. They have what they wanted at heart. They would rather have an overthrow in Kiev, but they see that's not possible. So they're getting as much land as possible. And then lately they've been making a lot of breakthroughs on the front lines of the Ukrainians. And the Ukrainians just have to keep falling back and falling back. They don't have enough ammunition. They don't have enough shells. They don't have enough men. They're getting mauled up. So that's what Russia just has to just wait. And then as far as the Ukrainians go, they haven't gotten the $65 billion aid thing, the package, but I'm a little curious as to what will happen when they get that. Is things could flip overnight. One recent Russian counteroffensive just today, I was watching one of my sources, and it was beaten back. So the Ukrainians know how to fight. They're veterans. They've been doing this for years, and they know how to fight. They just need weapons. But now it's gotten to the point where they need men. And I think they should hire a mercenary group. They have $65 billion on their way. Take 50 million of that, which is a percentage. 50 million out of 65 billion. Take out $50 million and hire a mercenary group from Australia, from Britain. Oh, that could get a little dicey. But just hire a mercenary group. Usually mercenary groups are ex-special forces. So hire a 25,000, kind of like the Wagner group in Russia before Prigozhin had the falling out with the Kremlin and he was assassinated. They had about 30 to 50,000 troops, and they made a massive difference at the beginning of this war, the Wagner group. There's a number of mercenary companies in Britain, in the United States, in Africa, and Australia. They're everywhere. It's you're a contractor. So I think they should hire mercenaries, but I'm pushing 15 minutes, so I'm going to stop now. And like I said at the very beginning, most of the focus is on Israel and Gaza, which is a more potent and more, it has a potential for conflagration much more than what's been going on in Russia and Ukraine. because we've been watching that. So we'll see what happens, guys. I don't know what to say. We're going to see what happens. But I wanted to make this from my one of my fans, Rich. He was curious, So, Rich, I hope you like this, and give me some feedback. All right, buddy.